ford. Evans interposed his small, 900-man force in front of 20,000 advancing Federals, buying time but ultimately being beaten back, as were other holding actions by Brigadier General Barnard B. and Colonel Francis S. Bartow. The Confederates retreated from Matthews Hill, over Buck Hill, and up Henry House Hill, outnumbered and dispirited. Jackson on the Confederate right moved here and there in response to confusing orders from the excitable General Pierre Gustave Toutant Beauregard, the hero of Sumter, who shared command with General Joseph E. Johnston. Finally intuiting that the fight was elsewhere, Jackson marched his 2,800 men to Henry House Hill, arriving there around noon. Southerners retreated past him as he placed his men behind the crest of the hill, an ideal defensive position. General B. rode up. "The enemy are driving us," he told Jackson. "Then, sir, we will give them the bayonet." The shade had moved from my car, but the heat that came out was only moderately oven-like when I opened the door. Perfectly evocative of the battle, a mere 80 degrees, mild for a Virginia summer, and a great day for the spectators who had come out from D.C. to watch the saucy rebels get whipped. As I drove, I reflected on the young mother's grandfather and his cannonballs, and on all the other stories I'd heard about exploding Civil War ordnance. A history teacher at the high school near my house lost a couple of fingers when he was drilling out a shell to remove the powder so that he could sell the artifact through the mail. He was lucky. In 2008, a relic hunter named Sam White lost his life when a shell he was disarming exploded, sending shrapnel into him and into the porch of a house a quarter of a mile away. Like the cannonballs, long-dormant issues had become explosive because of the recent murder of 9 African-American parishioners at a church in Charleston, South Carolina. The massacre was particularly horrifying because the victims had opened their hearts to their attacker by welcoming him into their Bible study. The killer, Dylan Roof, a white supremacist, had been photographed with the rebel flag. A national outcry arose to eradicate it and other symbols of the Confederacy from public life. Confederate statues were vandalized. Some officials called for them to be razed or relocated. In New Orleans, Mayor Mitch Landrieu said the first step was to declare them a public nuisance. I turned on WPFW, Jazz and Justice Radio out of D.C. The talk show host asked her audience what they thought about the Charleston congregation forgiving the murderer. Her listeners wanted nothing to do with it. "I'm tired of these people hiding inside their churches," said one. "We've got to be more militant," asserted another. The host asked her to elaborate, but she hung up. I turned off the radio, distressed by thoughts of the tragedy as well as by the fact that a subject I loved, Confederate military history, had become a pawn in the culture wars. I found an intriguing historic site near an elementary school and parked to look around. The Jenny Dean Memorial was where the Manassas Industrial School for Colored Youth had stood until some 50 years ago. Civil War and African-American historical sites are often as close geographically as the intertwining issues posed by both. Dean, a former slave, was an educator and a church founder who died in 1913. I explored the 5-acre site, looking at photos and models of spacious, handsome buildings endowed by Northern philanthropists, wondering if demolishing them had been politically motivated, local officials eradicating a source of black pride, a symbol of interracial cooperation, or simply a necessity because of structural decay. As I was getting ready to leave, I discovered a historic marker about Manassas Junction. With its map in my head, I walked to the tracks. Railroad ties are shorter apart than a full stride, so you have to take mincing steps if you walk on them, or stumble along on the big stones of the roadbed if you don't. I alternated between mincing and stumbling, my awkward strides echoing my attempts to make sense of the issues surrounding Jackson, slavery, and the Civil War. Slavery was the cause of the war. It was a terrible institution. But for most Confederates, protecting their homes and families was a far more powerful motivator. There was nothing abstract about it. Home often meant their actual houses. To relate just one incident, when Captain Edward Stevens McCarthy of the Richmond Howitzers was killed by a sharpshooter during the Battle of Cold Harbor in 1864, his men broke down utterly and sobbed like children. His cousin procured an ambulance and carried the body to the family home.